The War Through the Lens of an Ordinary Boy, The Complete Life of Tony Vaccaro in World War II. Imagine a boy named Michelantonio Celestino Onofrio Vaccaro, born on December 20th, 1922, in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, the son of Italian immigrant parents who had to flee to Italy in 1925 due to threats from the mafia. When he was just 4 years old, his parents died. His father in an accident, his mother from illness. And the young Tony was handed over to an abusive uncle who forced him to work on the farm in Bonafro, Italy. His sisters were sent to an orphanage. He grew up under Mussolini's fascist regime, watching the war approach. And in 1939, still a teenager, he used his American passport to return alone to the United States to escape Italian military service. He arrived in New York, went to live with relatives in New Rochelle, and enrolled in Isaac E. Young High School. It was there that a chemistry teacher named Bertram Lewis looked at him and said, "Tony, you are a born photographer." With the money he saved from working odd jobs, he bought his first camera, an Argus C 335mm rangefinder for $35, and began photographing everything: streets, friends, the simple, everyday life of an immigrant who just wanted to be American. In 1943, at age 21, right after high school graduation, the draft notice arrived. Tony was drafted into the United States Army. He requested assignment to the Signal Corps, the official photographers unit, but the captain laughed and said, "You're too young. You have to become a soldier first." Tony replied by mimicking pulling a trigger. "I'm old enough to do this with a rifle, but not old enough to do it with a camera." The captain found it amusing, but denied the request. Instead, Tony was assigned to the 83rd Infantry Division, nicknamed the Thunderbolt or Ohio Division, specifically to the 331st Regiment, Headquarters Company, Intelligence Platoon, because he spoke Italian and other languages. On April 16, 1944, the division arrived in England and set up camp at Keele Hall, Staffordshire. There were 2 intense weeks of training: long marches with 30-kilogram packs, rifle practice with the M1 Garand, landing simulations. Tony carried his Argus C3 hidden the whole time, already dreaming of recording everything. On June 18, 1944, exactly 12 days after D-Day, Tony landed on the Normandy beaches in the dog green sector of Omaha Beach, right inside the German strongpoint Widerstands Nest 72. He had wrapped his camera in plastic to protect it from seawater and kept it hidden inside his coat, one hand always holding the camera while saluting with the other. The chaos was indescribable. Bomb craters everywhere, bodies still on the sand, German artillery firing in the distance. It was there, amid the ruins of the German fort, that he took one of his first war photographs, not with the heavy 9-kilogram official cameras of the Signal Corps photographers, but with his lightweight Argus weighing just 760 grams. He knew he could get closer because he was just another private, not an official photographer. The division advanced quickly. Tony marched day and night, carrying his rifle and camera, photographing what no one else could: soldiers eating cold K-rations, mail being delivered, Sherman tanks stuck in the mud, French civilians emerging from destroyed cellars. In August 1944, after weeks of fighting in Operation Cobra and the capture of Saint-Lô, the division liberated the small town of Saint-Briac-sur-Mer on August 15th. It was there that Tony captured one of the most famous images of his entire career: the kiss of liberation, a French nurse kissing an American soldier amid the joy of crowds throwing flowers. Eisenhower later said that photo was his favorite, but the war gave no respite. Tony began developing his own films because there were no labs available. In a destroyed French village, he found an abandoned camera shop and took chemicals and film. He divided the chemicals into 4 parts and used 4 steel helmets as improvised trays. First the developer, then water, then the fixer hypo, and another water rinse. He did this only on moonless nights, in total darkness. He hung the negatives on trees to dry. One soldier complained that his helmet smelled of hypo forever, so Tony started using only his own helmet for the fixer. He developed entire rolls this way, in secret, and sent the negatives to his sisters in the United States in regular letters so no one would discover them. Autumn brought the Hurtgen forest on the German border. Constant rain, mud up to the knees, trees exploding from artillery. Tony saw a German tank hit. The German soldier emerged in flames, screaming just one word: "Mother." He photographed the man burning alive, an image that haunted him for decades afterward. It was in Hurtgen that he lost many friends. Winter arrived even worse. On December 27, 1944, the 83rd was thrown into the Battle of the Bulge to stop the last major German offensive. Tony spent Christmas in an icy trench with frozen rations, snow up to his waist, unable to sleep because of the cold and constant fear. He later said, "Sometimes I was afraid that while I was photographing, the Nazis would kill me, so I worked very fast, often without even looking through the viewfinder, just firing the shutter." On January 11, 1945, near the village of Otter in Belgium, the massacre he never forgot occurred. Tony was on sentry duty at battalion headquarters when, at 2:30 a.m., a survivor named Harry Shoemaker crawled in and reported that the entire platoon had been massacred. In the morning, Tony went with him to the field between Otre and Petit Langlier. There lay the bodies of about 27 American soldiers scattered over 150 square meters, machine-gunned by German fire and run over by a Tiger tank. He photographed everything: destroyed tanks in the background, one soldier crushed by a Sherman's tracks. It was Private James G. Fair, bodies half covered by fresh snow. One of them was his friend Henry Theber Tannenbaum from New York, who had shown Tony photos of his wife and baby just days earlier. He took the photo he called White Death, Henry's body lying peacefully in the snow as if posing for a portrait. In the middle of the road, he also photographed the body of Jack W. Rose at the exact moment a mortar fragment severed his spine, the image known as the last step of Jack Rose. He said, "I was photographing him when the shell exploded." Tony kept those photos not as trophies, but as proof of what really happened. After the Ardennes, the division crossed the Roer River and entered Germany in full force. On March 1, 1945, during Operation Grenade, Tony photographed soldier Ivan Parrott running through smoke near Neuss. Days later, he captured two comrades from Company K, Fred Praley and Robert Svensson, passing fresh graves in Grevenbroich. In April, in Walbruch, he saw stretcher-bearers carrying a soldier wounded by a sniper. The 83rd was the first American division to reach the Langenstein-Zwieberge subcamp, part of Buchenwald. What Tony saw there was indescribable. More than 1,000 skeletal prisoners, dying of starvation and exhaustion after working 16 hours a day in the mines. Even after being fed, 25 to 50 died each day. He photographed the survivors, the piled bodies, the horror that no censor would ever allow to pass. The march continued into the heart of Germany. In Rosslau, east of the Elbe River, Tony photographed German prisoners waiting in the square. In Berchtesgaden, he climbed to Hitler's Berghof, the Eagle's Nest, and captured American soldiers looking out through the broken window with shattered glass on the floor, an image that became famous as Hitler's window. On May 8, 1945, when Germany surrendered, Tony was somewhere in central Germany, with 272 days of continuous combat behind him and more than 8,000 photographs taken. He was 22 years old. The war in Europe ended for him there, but he was still sent to the Pacific. The atomic bomb ended it all before he saw combat again. Tony returned home in 1946, but left all his war negatives with his sisters. He no longer wanted to see death. Only decades later, in the 1990s and 2000s, the world discovered his archive: exhibitions, the book Entering Germany, the documentary Under Fire. He lived until December 28, 2022, just 8 days after turning 100, still working in his studio in Long Island City, identifying old photos. Tony Vaccaro was just an ordinary boy with an illegal camera and a rifle who decided to record the truth so no one could ever say the war was clean or glorious. And so ended World War II in the real life of Tony Vaccaro. Not with cinematic fanfare, but with the smell of hypo in helmets, the weight of snow on a friend's body, the silence after surrender, and the certainty that, even as just one more soldier, he left humanity the most honest record of what really happened between 1944 and 1945.